I'm standing at the home port here on Staten Island, where the USS Boone, the Portland, the Roberts, the Normandy, the Oak Hill, and the British ship HMS Endurance are all docked here for the duration of Fleet Week. Now, of all the ships that are docked here, there's one that has more of a history with Staten Island and the former Navy base than any other. That ship, the USS Normandy. Con Edison is reporting that there may be some power diversions throughout the weekend in order to satisfy its other needs throughout the state. The DEP will now move on to the other 4 boroughs, where other city residents will voice their concerns about the proposed rate hike. We're going to go through the dishes that they're going to be having, the many drinks they'll be having, and the bands that will be playing out in the parking lot of the mall here during the celebration. So Anthony, why don't you show us some of the dishes here, explain what they are. But don't get too attached to your SUVs, because you may soon be trading them in for one of these gems. If you're planning on putting up an illegal billboard, such as the ones behind me, you better make sure that you're getting at least $2,500 a month for them, because that's the minimum amount you'll be paying in fines. In Duncan Hills, for the Staten Island News Center, I'm Jonathan Parisen. Disturbing images of abused, mentally disabled people, many of them children, housed by the thousands in a grossly understaffed institution, beaten, tied up, many used as guinea pigs in illegal, appalling experiments performed by the same government that was supposed to care for them. The events in those images didn't take place in some faraway third world country. They actually took place a lot closer to home, a lot closer than a lot of people would like to imagine. Right here, on what is now the campus of the College of Staten Island, and what was, not long ago, the Willowbrook State School, one of the most infamous government institutions in this nation's history, what some people would even call America's concentration camp. And there's a group of people who want to make sure that the terrible events that occurred here are never forgotten.
We have an initiative here that's been going on for about 2 years, and we have actually a very unique collection from Willowbrook dating back to 1947, including articles and from the paper, photographs. We have personal narratives, oral histories. It's quite an extensive collection.
We're interested in building up a collection that both students here on campus would be able to use, but also researchers from around the world who are interested in studying the Willowbrook State School.
Constructed in 1938, the Willowbrook State School was created to house and educate the mentally disabled. But in time, all that would change for the worst.
Folks were injected with psychotropic medications on an experimental basis. They were subjected to hepatitis B, pretty much similar to what was done in the Nazi prison camps.
In 1966, Senator Robert Kennedy visited the school and was shocked by the sights of the inhumane treatment of the residents. But it wouldn't be until 6 years later that anything would be done about it. In 1972, television journalist Geraldo Rivera and a small camera crew broke into the Willowbrook State School, capturing all of the horrifying images on film and showing them to the public. Soon after, the school was shut down, and a lawsuit was brought on to the state of New York, a lawsuit that continues to this day. Willowbrook is a much different place now, a true place of education, where thousands of students come from all over to learn math, science, and history, and are hopefully taught the history of the horror that occurred in the buildings that they learn in, making sure that history never repeats itself. At the College of Staten Island in Willowbrook, for the Staten Island News Center, I'm Jonathan Parisen. It is this Annandale train platform where 2 teenage boys were brutally beaten by a gang of young thugs, leaving one of the boys to lay in a coma for weeks. And it is this incident that has riders of the rails concerned about their safety.
I'm scared because there's no protection. There's nobody here. It's too isolated.
In the day, it's just pretty much like everywhere else you are, but at night it's a little bit like, there's always a lot of kids over here, so it's like, you shouldn't be by yourself like anywhere you go, because you never know what can happen to you.
We decided to ride the rails to see just how safe or unsafe the trains and their stations are. During the day, one might feel safe being surrounded by mostly families on their way to play or business people on their way to work. But at night, it was a much different crowd, with a much more dangerous feel. While at the Eltingville station, we came across hordes of unruly teens, some drinking alcohol, blocking both the entrances and exits to the station, which were dimly lit. The platforms, which have no emergency phones, or even payphones for that matter, are located high above or deep below the streets. Being that passengers are not charged a fare in any of the 21 stations except for the St. George Ferry Terminal, there are no Staten Island Rapid Transit workers to collect fares. And as far as we could see, there was little or no police presence on the platforms. All of this leaving one to feel isolated and on their own if they were to get into any type of trouble. The trains weren't much better. With no SIRT employees in sight, crowds of drunken partygoers were free to drink open bottles of alcohol and make a general nuisance of themselves with no fears of getting in trouble. With all of these dangerous elements in play on a daily basis, it is only a matter of time before another tragic event takes place on the SIRT. In Annandale, for the Staten Island News Center, I'm Jonathan Parisen. The silence of a normally quiet night and the lives of 2 undercover cops were shattered by gunfire in a sting that went terribly wrong. The island was turned upside down as police officers from all over the city raced into neighborhoods from Stapleton to St. George in search of suspects responsible for killing 2 of their own.
This department and this city will not rest until those responsible for this barbaric act are found.
In the air and on the ground, the police left no stone unturned.
At approximately 8 o'clock this evening, 2 New York City police detectives were shot and killed during a gun-buy operation here on Staten Island.
According to Police Commissioner Raymond Kelly, 2 of New York's finest made a deal with 18-year-old Omar Green to buy a Tech-9 handgun. It was a deal that would cost the 2 police officers their lives. The 2 detectives armed with guns and wireless microphones met the suspects at 67 Hill Street.
They agreed to go forward with the deal. The 2 men in the lobby got into the back seat of the car with the undercover detectives, and over the cell phone, Omar directed them to drive.
From there, they drove through the streets of Tompkinsville in a black 2000 Nissan Maxima driven by one of the detectives. Tailing the Maxima were 3 unmarked police cars who were also listening in on the wireless microphones. It was at Victory Boulevard and Corson Avenue where things started to go wrong.
The detectives pulled the car to the curb. The backup detectives had to now regroup because the car had stopped.
One of the suspects stepped out of the Maxima to talk to Omar Green, who was in contact with the 2 suspects on a cell phone. When the suspect returned to the Maxima, the 2 detectives and the 2 suspects drove up Corson Avenue and turned onto Westervelt Avenue. It was then that the backup cars lost sight and contact with the Maxima. Fearing for safety of the 2 undercover cops, detectives in charge ordered a search of the neighborhood. Minutes later, police found the bodies of their 2 colleagues on St. Paul's Avenue and Hannah Place. Both were shot in the head. The 2 police officers were rushed by ambulance to St. Vincent's Hospital, where they were both pronounced dead.
The car they had been driving in was recovered a short time later.
That's when the massive search began for the gunman and other suspects, closing island bridges and disrupting ferry service.
And tonight, tragically, we grieve for these brave men and we pray for their families.
The mayor is calling this a gruesome murder, and he vows that the suspects will be apprehended. At St. Vincent's Hospital in West Brighton, for the Staten Island News Center, I'm Jonathan Parisen.